นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิ Blessings, good evening. When we chant in praise of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, every evening and in morning chanting as well, we are recollecting the qualities of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. So the three main qualities of the Buddha are the great wisdom of the Buddha, Mahapanya, the great compassion, Mahakaruna, and the great purity, Mahaparisuddhi, of mind. Purity as in pure from the mental defilements that cause suffering. The great wisdom of the Buddha is that he understood the Four Noble Truths completely, and through his own efforts, his own practice, without a teacher. So he fully comprehended the nature of dukkha, suffering. He fully relinquished its cause, abandoned its cause, which is ignorance, craving, attachment. He realized the end of suffering, nirodha, and he perfected the path that leads to the end of suffering, magga. And then also he had great wisdom in that he could teach others to understand and penetrate these Four Noble Truths. And so wisdom leads directly on to compassion, because by understanding our own mind and our own experience, we begin to understand other people. So if the Buddha fully understood his own mind, then he could understand how other people also suffer under the effects of ignorance, craving and attachment, but if they follow the path, then they can free themselves from that suffering, just as he did. And his teachings were coming from this place of understanding, knowledge, understanding and purity. He wasn't teaching with delusion, so he didn't pass on any mistaken information or anything that was harmful to others. He only passed on the good things. Another word they use for the Buddha is sapanyu, all-knowing. Because the Buddha trained his mind to the highest level for so long, said that he could know anything that he set his mind to know. So even better than the best computer that a person can program, the mind of the Buddha, wherever he directs his mind, he can know what he needs to know, what he wants to know. But of course he said he didn't pass on all the knowledge that he knew because it wasn't necessary. He passed on what is relevant or helpful for other beings to be free from suffering. So he compared all the knowledge that he knew to all the leaves on the floor of the forest. What he passed on to others is just a handful of leaves in his hand. Just enough knowledge, guidance for people to understand how to free themselves from suffering. So knowledge is something the Buddha praised, but it's a specific kind of knowledge. And that's because as human beings we have a specific problem, dukkha, suffering. That's what the Buddha was focused on with his great compassion. He was aiming to teach people, show them the way out of suffering. The word we use, suffering or stress, this word dukkha, it has a very broad meaning. But in what the Buddha was focused on is the meaning of dukkha in the Four Noble Truths. So, as we chant, being associated with what you don't like, separated from what you like and love, in brief, not attaining one's wishes, and categorized by these 5 khandhas that the Buddha divided up a human being into. Khandhas being basis for clinging, so we call them upadana khandhas. So form, feeling, perceptions, mental formations, sense consciousness. This is dukkha. When we attach, we cling with ignorance to these khandhas. But with this great knowledge of the Buddha, he also talked about other aspects of the world that we are born into. So he said, sabbe sankhara dukkha. All conditioned things are dukkha. Meaning they're all suffering in the sense that they don't last, they can't give us lasting happiness. Another way they put it is they're hard to endure, they're unenduring. Therefore they cannot be the highest happiness, because nibbana is permanent, it lasts. But the things of the world, which may not be particularly relevant to us, say like a mountain or a tree in some other part of the world, is still dukkha, even though it's not directly causing us any pain or trouble. But in its nature it's impermanent and doesn't last. Even mountains don't last. So we notice that especially when there's an earthquake or some event, weather event. You get mudslides and avalanches and earthquakes and things. So the characteristic of dukkha applies throughout the world. But where it's most important to us, where it's a problem to us, is when we experience dukkha as human beings. So the dukkha, say, of the body, aging, sickness, death, our bodies, the bodies of people we love and attach to. And then having a body and a mind, and we experience pleasure, pain. We want pleasure, we want it to last, but it doesn't last. We don't want pain, but sometimes we get pain. And the hard one, the sankhara khandha, is the real troublemaker, where our mind creates suffering, creates dukkha out of experience. As we know, when we come to meditate, a lot of our meditation time is spent up dealing with this sankhara khandha, battling to bring up the skillful mental states, say mindfulness, and try to reflect more on what's going on. But then constantly losing our mindfulness and getting lost back into emotional reactions and sleepiness and different kinds of mental defilement. And they're all in the Sankhara Khanda. And that's where we experience stress, that's where we create more stress out of our experience. So much of our practice is about training the Sankhara Khanda, bringing up mindfulness, insight, developing what we call detached awareness. Detached from what? Or detached from this Sankhara Khanda that is creating stress and problems for us. Detachment from our problems. Because as soon as you develop the qualities of the path, magga, particularly sila, restraint, morality, samadhi, which means mindfulness and states of calm, and then wisdom and insight, then the mind starts to separate from the stress-making Sankhara Khanda. And the mind can see stress as it is, and doesn't want to make any more, doesn't want to cling to it, doesn't want to create further stress. So starts this practice of letting go, abandoning the causes of stress. So this detached awareness is important because it gives us clarity. And getting to know our own mind and our own experience is the purpose of the Buddhist path. All the Dhamma that we hear and study is important, but it's leading to this goal that we're aiming to develop inner knowledge and understanding from our direct experience. It's like Ajahn Chah used to say, the only book worth reading is the mind. We have to learn to read the mind, know this mind. Particularly to know the Sankhara Khanda at work, so that we can abandon craving and clinging. So it often comes up, people have this doubt or question, how much should I study? How much should I read? How much should I listen? But you have to get that goal in mind. We are studying, reading, listening for a purpose, to support the practice of bringing attention inwards to observe the Four Noble Truths and understand these Four Noble Truths in our own experience. But because we have different characters and personalities, well, some people need to study a lot, read a lot, listen to a lot. It helps to quieten the doubts, put the doubts aside. Others only study a little, enough, just enough to practice with. This is partly depends on your character and your vasana, your karmic accumulations. Get to know yourself, what works for you. Some people, listening to the Dhamma, studying the Dhamma, their mind goes quiet and it really helps. Some people get more confused, or some people cling to the words and the theories, that kind of knowledge, and feel this is the Dhamma, whereas in fact they still haven't penetrated the Four Noble Truths in their own experience internally. So even how we relate to the Dhamma that we hear and remember, we have to apply mindfulness and reflect on that as well, so that we are understanding whether we know through, we say just through memory, what we remember from what we've heard, and what we're actually knowing, the knowledge and vision of seeing, knowing our own experience. And probably everybody has been through that experience where they start meditating and they're not peaceful, the mind is thinking a lot, not settling down, maybe have some body pain as well. And say, after a while just feel uninspired or confused or tired, so then rather pick up a book or listen to a Dhamma talk rather than actually continue with the meditation. Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but at some point we also have to be willing to look and learn from that state of confusion or the pain or the tiredness or the restless mind, whatever it is that's bothering us. We also have to learn how to face it and learn from it. Sit through it. Sit and observe. Sit longer. And before you get up and go and find something else to do, ask yourself, have I done enough in my practice at this time? Is there more I can do? Can I be more patient, more mindful, so that I can really understand this mind and understand dukkha, see it as dukkha, as opposed to just react to it with aversion or restlessness. And dukkha in itself is a characteristic. And the Buddha pointed out, we say it's not self. So when we have the feeling, this stress, this pain, this unhappiness I'm experiencing is me, already that's like should be sending alarm bells, because that sense of me is the sense of self, is attachment. It's the very cause of dukkha, more dukkha. By attaching to it with a sense of me, clinging with a sense of self, we're actually making it last longer, making it worse, making it more intense. The thought, I am this dukkha, or this dukkha is mine, belongs to me, actually makes it worse. We're giving more importance to it than we need to. And this is why we practice, bringing up mindfulness and then investigating. Because we do it all the time, every day, all the time. We're constantly clinging to dukkha, reacting to it, creating this I am, I, me, mine out of it. It's only prolonging the agony, as it were. Whereas when you're mindful, you have to notice when mindfulness comes up, and particularly when it's more continuous, the same experiences of dukkha may arise, but then when they're met with mindfulness, you don't necessarily form self around them. You just know them. Oh, it's like this, and then the dukkha fades. And that's something else we probably all experience from time to time. You maybe have some pain in your body as you're meditating, or a painful memory, unpleasant memory comes up, but you meet it with mindfulness, and it's as if the pain dissolves because you're mindful, patient, observing, reflecting. Then that pain dissolves because the sense of self, the sense this is me, I am this, disappears from the mind at that moment. You tend to get a boost from that. You get a little bit of rapture or joy, or at least some sense of peace, because you're letting go of the very cause of suffering. The mind that says, this is me. When it's me, when you have the sense of me, then it's very important. We take it seriously and it becomes this problem. When the sense of self disappears under the power and light of mindfulness and wisdom, then the sense of you having a problem is reduced or even disappears altogether. Another way Luang Por Chah might answer people, and they say, "How are you? Are you an arahant? Are you enlightened?" He says, "I have no problems." Maimi panha. As if the mind fully understands these Four Noble Truths, then it doesn't have to create a problem even when there is some suffering experienced. Suffering is just suffering. It arises, passes away. There's no problem. And that's the purpose of what the Buddha was teaching, is to give us a tool, give us a method to understand the body and mind, understand the process by which we suffer, but then to have a remedy so we don't have to have problems. Maybe other people still have problems. That's another problem, isn't it? We attach to other people, so sometimes our practice is going quite well, but then there's people around us that we love or attach to, so then they become our problem and we're back to square one. But it's the same thing, it's the sense of identification. This is my parent, my child, my friend. As soon as we establish this craving and attachment, then we have suffering. So sometimes people then react and they say, "Oh, Buddhism is so depressing. You say, no craving, no attachment. Does that mean I can't have family, friends? Does everyone have to become a monk, nun?" The idea is to remove the craving and attachment from your thinking. It doesn't mean to say you can't have family, friends, you can't interact with the world. It's more how you treat your interactions and not always reacting with craving and attachment to your experience. That's the important thing. Or people say, "Oh, when you listen to the Buddha's teachings, it seems like everything is dukkha, everything is suffering." Well, that's true in a way, but the idea is to get your mind to see it, so then there's no attachment, so then there's no suffering with the suffering of the world. Sometimes the mind is not ready for that thought, everything is suffering, so then it becomes depressed. And so they say, "Oh, Buddhist, you're so depressing." Actually, the world is just as it is. Even these 5 khandhas that we call a self are just as they are. You know, arahants, liberated people will still have khandhas until they die. They still get aches and pains and catch colds and have all kinds of diseases and issues that come up in their life. But their mind no longer creates a problem out of all these things. They know it's just what it is. It is what it is. But the ordinary mind still makes a problem out of it. Sometimes we even look for problems. You know, nothing's happened yet and we're already worrying, proliferating. It's the Sankhara Khandha again, creating fears and worries out of an experience, seeing it as negative, or projecting into the future what may happen in a negative way, worrying about other people, that things may happen to them, worrying about what may happen to us. So it's almost like we are trained to create problems. So now we're training to stop creating problems out of experience. A problem-free life is not necessarily without difficulty and challenges or without pain. That's impossible, because if you have a body, you're going to have some pain and difficulty with it. But a problem-free life is how you look at this body and mind, how you regard it, the way you view it. If you view it as something that is impermanent, subject to change, aging, then you know it's also going to be dukkha, because it can't maintain a perfect, healthy, happy state. And the same with your mind. This sankhara khanda is constantly manufacturing thoughts, and then there's feelings and memories. Sense consciousness is coming to us all the time, and not all of that is good, is it? Some pleasant, some unpleasant. If we see the impermanence of things, we have that clarity, then we know that's just the way it is. It's no longer a problem. When we lose the clarity, then that unpleasant sight, unpleasant sound becomes me. I don't want this unpleasant feeling, or I want more of the pleasant feeling that I can't get, or I can't hold on to. Then the problems start. Where does it come from? Well, it just comes from that tiny little spot in the center of our consciousness that still keeps producing this voice that says, me, mine, myself, I am here. So if it's unpleasant, the experience, then it's I am suffering. If it's pleasant, then it's I am happy, but then you cling to that, and then you get suffering in the end, in the long run. It's really just this little kind of dot of I-making dot that we haven't noticed or haven't fully recognized. It keeps sneaking into our experience, even when you're peaceful in meditation. Body feels good, mind is fairly calm. A little I-making dot will appear sooner or later, won't it? And then you'll get a doubt, how long is this going to last? Or some memory of something else, I'm peaceful here, but what about this other problem in my life? It's still there in the background. The I-making dot is there all the time, waiting to get us. So we have to keep looking and learning from our experience. See where we create a problem, create a self out of everything, even the good stuff. Maybe one way that we get some hope and inspiration in our practice, following these teachings of the Buddha, is that if you've seen this I-making part of the mind, we call it mana, conceit. If you've seen it once and let it go once, will you have some insight that you can do it again? Sense of self, you've let it go before, well, you can let it go again. And you can't be sure, but if you're following the teachings of the Buddha, at least you take on trust that if you keep letting go of it, eventually it will go quiet, it will disappear. Even if you haven't fully experienced that, but you can see the method, the practice, how you will get there. The light at the end of the tunnel. So this is why when we chant in praise of the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, we're recognizing the goodness and the good fortune of having encountered the Buddha, the Dhamma Sangha, taken refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Because it gives us a way out of this problem-making mind, problem-making life. It's the greatest gift, isn't it? The greatest gift is the gift of Dhamma. Dhammadanang sabbadanang jinati. It wins out over all gifts. If you have a friend who's got a birthday, or there's somebody is leaving and you give them a parting gift or something, you always think, what can I give? Well, the best gift is the gift of Dhamma. This is the Buddha's parting gift to us, or teachers such as Luang Por Chah. This is their great gift to the world, is the Dhamma that they left behind. Because it gives us a method, a way to stop making problems out of our existence. To live more at peace with ourselves, with the world, happier, clearer, letting go of the causes of suffering. So maybe I'll leave you with these reflections tonight and end the talk there.